Good morning, LinkedIn. Having my morning coffee and reading today's LinkedIn news and views, seeing what's related to the job search. All right, as always, I'm going to try and pull it up on my phone, so if anyone else is up bright and early on a Friday morning, January 3rd, we can see any comments that come through. All right, we've got the screen shared off to the right here, and we're going to use that to jump right into the first LinkedIn news and views today, which is when your interview is an audition. It's about 5 hours ago, and it says employees, still a little tired, first sip of coffee. Employers are looking to speed up the hiring process and may ask job applicants to try out roles by completing assignments. A company can quickly determine whether a person can do the job. And while these job auditions can be small tasks, job seekers say that some employers ask for projects requiring substantial time commitments. Some feel that companies are more interested in free labor than hiring, and to avoid being taken advantage of, one career expert suggests doing your homework on employers, asking questions, and negotiating the terms of the test. All right, well, some interesting tips there, but I want to break this down piece by piece. The first thing here is employers are looking to speed up the hiring process. They might say that, right? But for anyone who is looking for a job or who has been looking for a job, you'll know that the job application process has only gotten more complex and is only taking more time than ever before. I think it's something like a 6-month average is super normal now. And a company, or for a job search, and a company that's trying to hire is going to take multiple months and probably up to 3 or 4, maybe even more interviews in order to figure out whether or not you're the right candidate. Now, this kind of goes against a lot of what we think about and know and hear when it comes to something like the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, where, first impressions are pretty spot on. So how can we keep putting people through this rigmarole? How can we keep trying to, hedge our bets and figure it out before we hire? It's almost as though a lot of these companies forget that they're allowed to fire people. And that's what Gary Vaynerchuk would say. He's like, I hire quickly and I fire quickly. Rather than waste all the time, effort on the front end, you save it on the back end by just making sure that, well, if they're not right for the job, they're not right for the job, and you can always move on. And I think that's something that a lot of employers forget, but it's also something a lot of people forget when they're applying for jobs, is that you can always leave that role if it's not right. And so you can take a few chances in your career, especially early on, but throughout your career, you can take chances. But that comes to this next point, which is job auditions, right? If you have a very traditional mindset, you're not going to want to change jobs very often, right? And if you don't want to change jobs very often, your skill of finding a job is going to atrophy. And so there's things that you can do, such as these job auditions. You can actually do this on your own before you ever get an interview. You can take these online, you can actually go to the websites where they do these things and try and answer the questions. A big thing that's coming down the pipeline for interviews is the one-way video interview. Now, how do you practice for a one-way video interview? I can tell you from firsthand experience, when I did a one-way video interview for the first time, it gave me a lot of anxiety. I was kind of freaking out over it. And I'm someone who makes videos on a fairly regular basis, but I've always made videos with like a script and like kind of knowing what I was going to say. And so when you sit down and there's literally a counter in the top right part of the screen, and it's saying like you have 10 seconds left to answer, I start getting a little anxious, right? And I'm like, this is going to be recorded. I only have so many chances to record it. And so one of the things that you can do is what I'm doing. You can practice by doing live video on your own. You can actually download software that they use and just do it on your own. You can just record yourself on your cell phone answering questions and listen back to it. There's a lot of things that we can do to get better at these, quote, job auditions. And then I want to get a little more specific, because I think the other thing here is these job auditions can be small tasks and things like that. So for a UX designer, they might ask you to wireframe something, or for a developer, they might ask you to do a take-home challenge. There's all these different things, and the point down here, it says, to avoid being taken advantage of, one career expert suggests doing your homework on employers, asking questions, and negotiating the terms of the test. I think that's good advice, but it is pretty expert level advice. Like, if you're able to counter and negotiate and ask questions and set terms, you're probably in a pretty good spot overall in your interviewing abilities. If you're able to do that without having a complete anxiety attack, from what I've seen with most job seekers, or without ruining your chances and coming off as like standoffish and things like that. So I think it's good advice, and it's something that we should all be working towards. But I also want to kind of talk to where we're actually at with things. And I think where we're actually at with things is sometimes we just need to eat the time as sort of the cost of admission to learning how to do this job search process. I tend to look at job auditions, these like take-home assignments. Like, for me, it would be a resume review, or a cover letter review, or some sort of like mock interview, mock coaching call, or something like that. And the way I look at it is just practice. I just chalk it all up to practice. This is helping me get better at job interviewing. So it might take a lot of time, and it might be a lot of effort, but it's going to make every other job interview in the future easier if I have a positive mindset about it and I'm going about it the right way. And so, I don't know, I just basically look at everything as education, which I think makes doing a job audition or some of these small tasks, even if it feels like, are they trying to take advantage of me? Am I doing like a take-home assignment that they're going to go use? It does get into some dicey territory there. But I think looking at everything as an educational opportunity, and then having a very positive mindset around it, I think is usually the way to keep yourself from falling into a rut when it comes to doing these sort of job auditions and small tasks. Some people feel that companies are more interested in free labor than hiring. I'm not sure if companies have their hiring process together enough that they're like using the online job postings as a labor farm. If they are doing that, they're probably a smaller company. But I don't know. Disagree with me in the comments if you think that companies are really trying to get free labor rather than hire someone good. I mean, from my experience, a bunch of outlines and ideas, and a take-home assignment that can be done in a couple of days or a week isn't going to be enough for a company to go build an entire strategy around. It could be, I guess, but I'm curious what your thoughts are around that. So that is when your interview is an audition. So that's our first article for today. The next article I wanted to pull up, which is related to the job search, is that job cuts accelerated last year. So while job cuts were the smallest last month since July 2018, last year ranked as one of the worst for reductions during the past decade. Employers announced more than 500,000 job cuts, behind the 600,000 cuts in 2011 and 2015. According to data from outplacement firm Challenger & Gray, the slowdowns and reductions last month came as the unemployment rate is expected by analysts to have remained at half-century low of 3.5%. The U.S. Labor Department is set to release December data next week. Ooh, we got data coming. Data's coming. Here it comes. A quirk in holiday timing may have kept unemployment claims from falling further. 2020 promises to be a prosperous year. CEOs should anticipate more wage inflation despite the still low labor participation rate. Interesting. All right. I don't have a whole lot to add to this one, but I did think it was an interesting article, just to kind of get an idea of what's happening in the labor market right now. So I don't know. It's always, I'm gonna be honest, I don't have a lot to add to that one. Hence the live videos, always learning as we go. I had a lot more to say about the auditions. And then I wanted to just follow up on yesterday's live video where we talked about the legalization of marijuana and cannabis and all that good stuff in Chicago. I find it to be very interesting that on the one hand, we are legalizing an entire new sector of the smoking world. And at the exact same time, we are banning an entire section of the smoking world. I don't really smoke, so none of this really affects me. But but it is a very interesting duality and look at how the world is operating. In my mind, I think it's super interesting that there was another article I was reading this morning that I can't find anymore, but it's talking about how we've got like 3.5 million in sales already in Chicago, I think, for cannabis sales. And at the same time, smokers and vapors need not apply. We raised the age limit for who could smoke from 18 to 21 federally, I believe, which makes a whole lot of smokers suddenly unable to buy their vapes and whatnot. Probably a good move with all the vaping stuff that's been happening in the news. But U-Haul is the latest employer looking to build a nicotine-free workforce. I've never heard of this before. The Arizona-based company said it will not interview nor hire nicotine users starting February 1st. That seems like a very difficult thing to enforce in a company. I'd be very curious to see how that plays out. What if someone picks up smoking after they've been hired? Just seems like, on the one hand, things are becoming more and more open. On the other hand, they're becoming more and more strict. Arizona is among several states that allow employers to make hiring decisions based on smoking. The policies are becoming more common as companies look to cut healthcare costs. The city of Toledo, Ohio, stopped hiring nicotine users on July 15th. Some healthcare providers, such as CHI Memorial in Tennessee, also impose nicotine bans. Meanwhile, there's probably still McDonald's in hospitals. So what a weird world we live in. As long as they don't ban coffee from my workplace, which is my home, so that's never going to happen. Have at it. Have at it, folks. Do whatever you're trying to do. I don't know. I'd be curious to see how this impacts their healthcare costs, I guess. But it seems like it's going to be, maybe smoking is down so much it's not that big a deal. Maybe everyone's shifting over to cannabis and nicotine won't be as big of a thing. Curious what your thoughts are on how much control companies should have and how much say they should have in your life in this respect. But yeah, very interesting things happening in the news today. Thanks for anyone who joined the call and followed along and watched. Appreciate the little thumbs and claps and whatnot. Always curious what your thoughts are in these live streams. I want to make these as valuable as possible to you. So it's going to start with some news stuff. But if you have questions, put them in the comments. And we can always go on tangents and talk about your job search, your career goals, the changes you want to make in 2020. So I appreciate you joining, and I wish you all the best on this wonderful Friday. Have a great weekend.